Hello, guten Tag, and grüß Gott. So this segment of the of this video is a continuation of my spiritual journey, part 1, and this is going to be part 2. And obviously, I have my ghost with me, and so please be tolerant of that, because we may have a bark, we may have a, I don't know, whatever. He's giving me the Pyrenees paw right now, so if you can see this, this is what's happening. So I left you with a video last time when I talked about the fact that Kaiser Steel had not only a motel outside of the gate, but also a barber shop. And the barber shop was for people to come in and get a haircut, so you didn't have to, during lunchtime or something like this, or any time, because if you were in management, you could carve out a time to go, So if you had an appointment during your workday, you could do it. You could just do it because we were all salaried, not paid by the hour. So that's what was going on. Anyway, so the motel was used for dignitaries that came to visit, so they had a place to stay and, could basically just drive in through the gate. And if you were in management, you could drive in. If you were an hourly person, you had to walk in because they didn't want, imagine if everybody would go in and out with a car. There's a lot of stuff that would go in and out. As a matter of fact, we have lost things at Kaiser Steel. Probably the biggest thing that I remember that was lost was a bulldozer. Somebody made off with a caterpillar. Yeah, they did make off with a caterpillar. And but it was a caterpillar that was brought in by a contractor, so it wasn't Kaiser Steel property, and somebody came to pick it up, and it wasn't the contractor that came to pick it up, but somebody stole it, so they were quite upset about it. So I don't know whatever happened. So anyway, I availed myself of the barber shop there. And so I made an appointment. And then, so I met this guy. It was really an interesting guy right away because he was tall. He was probably about, 6'6". And he had this charming Texas accent, So we got to talking. We talked, and I don't know how exactly it was. The conversation turned to something esoteric, which was. So I can't remember exactly what that was, but he introduced himself as Ed, and I'm going to leave off his last name for now. But so that was Ed the barber, and that's how I met him. And he said, "You know what?" He said, there's if you're interested in talking about what we're talking about now, you're more interested. It's a group of people, that I can ask them if you can come and join because we do talk about these kinds of things. And these kinds of things, meaning maybe we talked about biblical stuff or something like this. Now, none of that happened on the very first meeting of Ed. This was, a process. He gave me a haircut, and the haircut was good, and I made another appointment maybe next month, That's when I used to have a lot of hair, it was dark and, it was a lot of hair. So that was convenient, and it had a really nice shop, it had all the accoutrements, the chair and the whole thing, So anyway, I went to his home. And his home was a trailer. Nice trailer, double wide, whatever, And there I met two guys, they were brothers, Cal and Joe. And it was really fun because they brought out a bottle of whiskey, something, and we started to drink, and we started to laugh, and we started to talk about stuff, and it just went on and on. And I thought it was fun, so as usual, I would drive home myself, drunk as a skunk mostly, and got home safe, you know what I mean? And in the morning, of course, I go to work. I was in my early 30s, this was okay, that worked fine. So anyway, and then I start to go to regular meetings with these guys, and we started to talk about really deep subjects. We talked about magic. We talked about astral travel. I've never heard of that before. But these guys claimed that under certain circumstances, they could visit other planets and things of that nature, with their consciousness, at the speed of thought. The speed of thought far exceeds the speed of light, Well, anyway, I thought it was interesting, and of course the booze was always flowing. The next meeting we had was at Cal's home.
Don't forget to take out your trash cans.
So, we actually we met at other people's homes. Like for instance, at Cal's home, and Cal just had a regular home, and Joe also had a regular home. Now these two guys, Cal and Joe, they worked at Kaiser Steel. So, what else can I tell you about that meeting? Anyway, Ed ultimately introduced himself as a warlock. Now, I'm saying that in seriousness, a warlock, and he said he was a witch of the seventh water. And I've asked him about that, and he said, well, this falls under the realm of see thou tell no man. Okay? And that kind of shuts you up. And so in time I found out that Ed was actually far more interesting than this. He was actually a descendant of the people that owned the King Ranch in Texas. So he was a Texan, all right. And his family, as a matter of fact, his mother lived with him in that trailer. His family was disinherited somehow. Now, how that came about is not known. But, the money they had was not much, but they had enough to live on because he didn't really need to barber. Eventually, when Kaiser shut down and so forth, he moved away and barbered elsewhere, and, because he was basically playing on it. So I met, and I thought this was kind of interesting, is that, I'm a spiritual kind of guy, and witches and warlocks, I mean, why not? You know, I mean, I've just seen Rosemary's Baby, and I mean, stuff was going on, but what's interesting is I'm an engineer, and so my training is scientific, and yet I really the story sang to me, that these guys were talking about. And so I just listened mostly and learned from them. How am I going to be a witch and a warlock? And I figured, there's some sort of an apprenticeship involved, Well, that wasn't exactly the case, because we mostly, one of the things I learned from them is how do you burn an empty whiskey bottle, So if you don't know how to do this, figure it out. It's kind of fun, I mean, it does a nice whoosh, at the very end if you do it right. Anyway, and we smoked cigarettes. I used to smoke, and it was just kind of a relaxing time, and we probably did that about once every couple of weeks or something like this. And so I thought, well, these guys are having all these claims, about astral travel, and they were talking about things I had no idea about, but it all kind of sounded, I mean, these were smart people. For instance, so Ed was a really smart guy, was educated because he could talk on a lot of subjects, and then Cal was a computer programmer, so he was, I mean, he was super smart, as a matter of fact, he held some patents on computer programs, of how to maximize the profit out of rolling, and how you rolled certain kinds of materials, in the best way, and also, how do you ladle movement in the open hearth. I'll talk about this in more detail, what that means. Anyway, so he was the one that basically controlled Kaiser's computers. Now, he had a boss that didn't know anything about it, but Cal is the one that actually wrote the programs, So he's a smart guy. Joe was an interesting guy. He was a millwright, so he worked at Kaiser Steel. And when he'd show up for these meetings, he'd show up with, usually had a 6-gun with him, and he would take it out of his jacket, and lay it down. And it was a black powder kind of, like something like a Navy Colt or something like this,
Really?
Yeah, because he used to do this Hickok thing, where we'd load it every day. And he had, I remember all the, I looked in the cylinder, it had all the grease on it and so on, it was really interesting. And so there was Joe, and I found out later on that Joe was kind of an interesting guy also, because, he lived on an Indian reservation for a while, and he was an apprentice to one of the female medicine people,
Huh.
And he also played the guitar. He knew how to play the guitar, and he would learn some of these witchy songs from there. He'd play for us, It was really. I should have recorded some of this stuff. Anyway, and but Joe had kind of a colored past, and I could understand, why he'd come around with a gun, probably made him feel good or whatever, But anyway, I found out much later, that he was an enforcer for the mob, for a while, So he had a really kind of an interesting past. Anyway, so these were the 3 characters that I met, and I'm going to tell you more about this because I got deeply involved with these guys because they now became my friends. So I think I'm going to leave this part 2 right now, and I will talk about my spiritual journey in the next video.